So good morning everyone. My name is Shairra Valle. So today we're going to talk about child and adolescent development with learning principle module 4 pages 375 to 377. So to continue the report of Maimi Sumayang about physical disabilities and impairments. So let's start in the sensory impairment. So visual impairments. So when we say visual impairments, it means there is a malfunction about sa ilahang mata. So visual impairments is a malfunction of the eye or optic nerves that prevent normal vision even. So the visual impairments has three impairments. So first is myopia. When we say myopia, mo ni siya ang mga tao nga dili kakita og layo. So it makes it difficult to see things that are far away. So, next is hyperopia. So, kani si hyperopia, opposite sa ni siya. So, it means, mo ni siya ang mga tao nga dili kakita o mga duol. When we say nearsighted, so, make it hard to see things that are near. So, next is the astigmatism. So, astigmatism is a very common and general but treatable na siya nga malfunction. That the eye can cause blurred or distance and near vision. So, when we see astigmatism, mo na siya ang mga tao nga dili kakita og layo ug di siya kakita og duol. So, but treatable ra na siya. Next is the hearing impairment. So, hearing impairment is very understandable kay when we say hear, so it means pangdungog. So, otherwise known as hearing loss. So, it is malfunction of the ear or auditory nerves that hinders perceptions of sounds within the frequency range of normal speech. So, si hearing impairment di ay, mo din siya ang inability of an individual to hear sounds adequately. So, when we say adequately, it means dili kaayo sila ka proper ka pandungog sa mga ipangsulti or sa mga sounds baron nga ilang madungog. So, this may due to improper development, damage, or disease to any part of the hearing mechanism. So, it means na siya possible nga ang tao na ay disease sa iyang pandungog, na ay mga kanang wala nga natarong o develop about sa iyang dunggan. So, mo na siya ang hearing impairment. So, next, let's go to giftedness. So, when we say giftedness, mo na siya ang mga tao or even students nga they have a advanced ability or potential in one or more specific areas when we compare to others of the same age, experience, or environment. So, kanina si giftedness, mo din siya ang mga tao nga naay ability nga makabuhat, nga mas maayo pa sa mga tao nga normal. So, the giftedness speaks of talent which includes all areas of child's life like academic, artistic, athletic, and social. So when we say giftedness, mo din siya ang mga tao nga kamao sa pag-academic, kanang mas maayo siya in terms of athlete and artistic baron like during drawing, and also giftedness involves significantly high levels of cognitive development, performance, and accomplishment. So, we have here 6 areas where giftedness can be found. So, first is creative thinking. So, when we say creative thinking, is a one-word description of a student's ability to generate new ideas. So, kani nga mga tao or students, mo ni siya ang kanang, dili lang guys sila, mustik ra sila nga ana idea, but mo go deeper bagay sila kanang kuan pa sila kanang mo go deeper pa sila to kanang maka-experience pa sila og mga new nga mga ideas, mga iwanana, mga kuan gali kanang creative and productive thinking kayo sila ba. So next is leadership. So when we say leadership, it is develop interpersonal and social skills. This explain their ability to negotiate, influence, and even dominate. So, ang student with leadership skills are typically responsible and self-assured. So, next is the general intellectual ability. So when we say general intellectual ability, mo ni siya ang presence of a high intellectual ability is more than just the student's ability to use a large vocabulary. So kani sila si general intellectual ability, kani sila kay kanang constant sila kanang bright, kung nay bright, mas bright sila, like ilahang vocabulary gay kan mas taas ilahang vocabulary kaysa sa mga normal nga mga student. So next is the psychomotor abilities. When we say psychomotor abilities, mo ni siya ang kinesthetic abilities that are highly developed lead to extraordinary psychomotor abilities. The gifted and talented students possess superior mechanical, spatial, and physical abilities. So there are no standardized tests for identifying gifted and talented children in this area, but fortunately psychomotor abilities can be observed. So next is the specific academic. So kani siya, the student does not have to excel in the all academic subject, but a high proficiency in one subject. Like for example, nayo sa kabata, not good kayo siya sa tanan academic, but there's a one subject nga kanang grabe jud kay siya kakamaayo. So mo na siya ang specific academic. So naara siya one subject nga grabe iyahang learnings about ana nya. Next is the visual or performing arts. So very understandable kayo, which is the student does not have to excel in all academics. So the student dili kinahanglan kanang kinahanglan siya ma-excel sa tanang subject, but high iyang proficiency in one subject with a percentile rank. So it means iyang quality sa performing arts or sa visual is very gifted kayo siya. So our next is Individuals with Disability Education Act, which is the IDEA. So the IDEA has 13 categories of disabilities. So first is the autism. When we say autism, mo ni siya ang mga bata nga naay neurodevelopment disorder, which is the child's ability to communicate and interact with others is impaired. So restricted repetitive behaviors, which is the interest and activities, are also included. So this problem have a significant impact on social, occupational, and other aspect of functioning. So next is deaf blindness. So when we say deaf blindness, it means has a hearing and visual impairment. So this is a combination which is result in such severe communication and other developmental and educational needs that they cannot be accommodated in special education programs designed for children who are deaf or blind. Next is the deafness. So a severe hearing impairment that impairs a child's ability to process linguistic information through hearing. So with or without amplification, and has a negative impact on a child's educational performance. So next is emotional disturbance. So emotional disturbance is a condition characterized by the presence of one or more of the following characteristic over a long period of time and to a significant degree which negative impact on a child's educational performance. So example of this is the anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive, and depression. So next is hearing disturbance. So when we say hearing disturbance, a condition or a hearing impairment with whether permanent or fluctuating that has negative impact on a child's educational performance but is not included in the definition of deafness. So next is the intellectual disability. So intellectual disability is a significantly below average general intellectual functioning that occurs currently with deficits in adaptive behavior and manifests during the developmental period and has a negative impact on a child's educational performance. So 7 is multiple disabilities. It is the combination of which result in a severe educational needs that they are unable to be accommodated in a special education program for one of the impairments. So deaf blindness is not included in the definition. So when we say the 8 categories of disability is the orthopedic impairment. So our orthopedic impairments, it is a impairment that has a negative impact on a child's educational performance. So this impairment caused by a congenital anomaly as well as impairment caused by disease. So example of this is cerebral palsy, amputation, and fractures or burns that cause contractures. So number 9 is other health impairments. So other health impairments is having a lack of strength, vitality, or alertness, including alertness to environment stimuli, resulting in a lack of alertness in the educational environment. So example of this is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. So next is specific learning disability. So disorder is one or more of basic psychological process involved in understanding or using spoken or written language. So which can manifest as an inability to listen, think, read, write, and spell, or perform mathematical calculation. This can cause a brain injury, minimal brain dysfunction, dyslexia, and developmental are all conditions covered by the umbrella term. So next is the speech or language impairment. So a communication disorders that impairs a child's education performance, such as a stuttering, impaired articulation, language impairment, or voice impairment. So example of this is stuttering, language impairment, or voice impairment. So the 12 categories of disability is traumatic brain injury. So an acquired brain injury caused by an external physical force that result in a total of partial function disability or psychosocial impairment. And then the last is visual impairment. So it is a vision impairment that even with correction has a negative impact on a child's educational performance. The term encompasses both partial vision and blindness. So example of this is partial sight and blindness. So next is dealing with learnings with exceptionality. So first is use people first language. It means to tell a person has, not what a person is. So for example of this is, for example, kanang tao nga dili kadungog, dili nimo siya tawgon og bungol, instead of tawgon nimo siya nga na siya hearing impairment. So kay it can cause kanang makakause og kanang masakitan siya, and then watakabaw nga ang kanang tao is nasad siya kanang mental disorder. So makakause niya og depression kung tawgon siya og ingon ana. So next is no generic labels, emphasize abilities, not limitations. So as I said, choosing language that emphasize what people can do instead of what they can't do is empowering. So next is no euphemism. So it is substitution of an agreeable in or offensive expression for one that may offend or suggest something unpleasant. So next is no implication of illness of suffering. Next is give brief and simple instruction, give clear definition of course requirements, the dates of exam and deadline of assignments. So kani siya kay if maka-encounter ta og mga tao nga na exceptionalities kanang kinahanglan if muhatag ta as a future educator kinahanglan sa ta mo give nila og kanang simple instruction or direction so that they can easily know asa unsay buhaton nila ug asa sila padong. So next is provide handouts and visual aids and study guides. So this help the students or sa mga tao nga they can easily understand o maka-remember din sila. Kay imo mas lagi tagaan o kanang guide gali para makaadto din sila or makasabot din sila kung unsay ilahang mga like questions or unsay ilahang mga gusto nga mahibaw-an. So next is provide several examples and demonstrations. So as a future educator or mga teacher, we need to provide the students or kanang mga tao na exceptionalities a example for them makahibaw sila and they will also experience ganang what is a real events or phenomena and processes for them to help to learn, raise the students' interest and motivation. So that's why we need to provide several examples and demonstration. So next is allow consultation time, allow asking and providing of assistance. So especially nato nga mga teacher, future teacher kinahanglan sa ta kanang mo provide nila og assistance, kinahanglan sa nato sila i-guide para dili sila maglibog kung sa ilahang mga buhaton, especially sa mga students na naay mga exceptionalities. So next is give encouragement. So give encouragement, this is a very common kayo nga dapat buhaton sa usa ka maestra. Kay ngano man need nato sila ihatag tagaan og encouragement para magana sad sila og buhat silang mga gusto mabuhaton and then kanang magana sad sila og eskwela ana. So next is last is the most important kanang how to deal nga sa mga student kana exceptionalities. It is always be patient. So kana jud ang pinaka-importante nga naa nato as a teacher. So dili lang kay sa student kana exceptionalities wa sa takabaw nga maka encounter data og lain sad nga mga tao nga nasa the exceptionality. So always we need to give a very long patience sa mga tao nga naiingon ana. So next is common instructional practices under special education. So first is universal design for learning. So this is recognizes and accommodates varied learning styles focusing on a social participation and inclusion. So when we say inclusion, it means inclusivity, it means kanang kuan siya equal tanan. So next is adaptations. Adaptation is designed to accommodate a student's need. Next is early intervention. When we say early intervention, it means monitoring students' response to instructions and documenting difficulties. So next is direct instruction. So when we say direct instruction, it is particular skills or content to learn is presented explicitly. So next is learning strategies. So maximize students' strength and provides structure. So next is the technologies. So it means personalize the learning experience. And then lastly is formative assessment. So when we say formative assessment, it is giving them or using them a feedback to continuous monitoring of students' progress. So now let's go to our last topic, which is the learning theories. So The first theory is all about classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. So, classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov is all about, it is based on adhesive principle, which means that a response is attached to a stimulus through the stimulus occurring just prior to response, so that the recurrence of the stimulus will evoke or cause the response. So this theory is a type of unconscious or automatic learning. So this learning process creates a conditioned response through associations between an unconditioned stimulus and neutral stimulus. So Ivan Pavlov has an experiment that is all about dog saliva experiment. So next is the connectionism and associationism theory by Edward L. Thorndike. So Edward L. Thorndike saw that the most distinctive forms of science in man and animal alike is learning by trial and error. So this type of learning is evident when the learner encounters problematic situation that must be solved and overcome to a goal. So Edward L. Thorndike has a three law, which are the law of effects, law of exercise, and law of readiness. So when we say law of effect, those behavioral responses that were most closely followed by a satisfying result were most likely to become established pattern and to occur again in response to the same stimulus. So next is the law of exercise. So law of exercise, it is a behavior is more strongly established through frequent connection of stimulus and response. So last is law of readiness. So what is law of readiness? It is independent upon the learner's readiness to act, which facilitates the strengthened of the bond between the stimulus and response. So the third theory is all about reflex conditioning by John Watson. So Watson is the best known for taking his theory of behaviorism and applying it to child development. So John Watson believed that strongly that a child's environment is the factor that shapes behavior over the genetic makeup or natural temperament. So John Watson, also known as Little Albert experiment, and instrumental to understanding of fear and phobia. So next is the operant conditioning by Frederick Skinner. So operant conditioning, it is an active behavior that operates upon the environment to generate consequences. So Skinner's theory explained that how we acquire the range of learned behaviors we exhibit every day. So the organism has to do something in order to get a reward, it must operate on its environment. Reinforcement is any behavioral consequence that strengthens behavior. It increases the likelihood of the recurrence of a particular type of response. So let's go to the type of reinforcement. So the first is positive reinforcement. So when we say positive reinforcement, it is adding something pleasant in order to increase a response. So next is the negative reinforcement. So when we say negative reinforcement, it is removing something unpleasant in order to increase a response. And then next is the primary reinforcement. It is the food, water, and sleep of a student. So next is secondary reinforcement. So what is the secondary reinforcement of a human? So first is the money, grades, stars, and token, and etc. So next is punishment is any behavioral consequence that diminish behavior. It is decreases the likelihood of the recurrence of a particular types of response. So the punishment has two types, which is the positive punishment and the negative punishment. So what is positive punishment? So positive punishment is adding something that is unpleasant in order to decrease a response, while the negative negative punishment, it is removing something in order to decrease a response. So that are the two types of punishment by Frederick Skinner. So number 5 is social learning theory. So social learning theory by Albert Bandura, it is also called observational learning theory, states the learning takes place when one person observes and then imitates the behavior of others, and process of learning through vigorous conditioning and observational learning. So social learning theory by Albert Bandura is most human behavior is learned through observation, imitation, and modeling. So observational learning has a 4 elements, so which is the attention, retention, mental reproduction process, motivational process. So attention, it is the mental focus or concentration. Retention, it is ability to retain information. Then the third one is motor reproduction process, it is perform what was observed. And then motivational process, it is encouragement, force that drives one to act. So next is Wolfgang Kohler's insight theory. So Wolfgang is gaining insight is a gradual process of exploring, analyzing, and restructuring perception until a solution is arrived at. So Wolfgang theory, it is the sudden understanding of the relation between a problem and a solution. So next is Gestalt theory, Kohler and Lewin. The primary focus of this theory is on perception and how people assign meaning to visual stimuli. The whole is more than the sum of its part. So this theory is all about discovered the learnings can occur when we gain insight into a certain solution. So number 8 theory is topological and vector theory. Kurt Lewin's topological and vector theory, field theory. So this theory is the behavior of an individual at a given moment is the result of existing forces operating simultaneously in his life space. So this theory is all about examines pattern of interaction between the individual and the total field. So number 9 is David Osobel's meaningful reception learning theory. So this theory, learners can learn best when the new material being taught can be anchored into existing cognitive information in the learners. So concerned with how students learn large amount of meaningful materials from verbal or textual presentation in a school setting. So meaningful learning result when information is acquired by the new information in the learner's own cognitive structure. And a major instructional mechanism proposed by Osobel is the use of advanced organizer, which help to link new learning materials with existing related ideas. So there are types advanced organizer, which is the expository advanced organizer and narrative advanced organizer. So when we say expository advanced organizer, it is giving a students a broad idea of the lesson proposed before the lessons begin. So this expository advanced, it is muhatag ka og idea sa usa ka estudyante before but related sa imuhang lessons before ka mo give jud sa exact topic kung sa jud inyuhang itackle. So next is narrative advanced organizer, involves storytelling. This also can attract the learner, especially students who have special needs, because most of the students they love hearing story, and then also when we give a story to the student, maka-figure out sila, and then they can also identify and then they can learn new things. So that would be all to my part. I hope you learned something, and thank you for listening. So the next learning theories will be tackled to the next reporter, which is Hannah Debra. So thank you and goodbye.